Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Rav Dessler. The month of Iyar is actually the month of Din. It's a month of judgment. And even though we know that the acronym for the month of Iyar is Ani Hashem Rofecha, I am Hashem that's going to heal you, it's also a time of healing, right? But that healing comes from the work that the Jewish people are engaged in, the work of building themselves up to the process of moving from Rosh Chodesh Nisan to the month of Sivan. So in that place, as long as you're working, you're doing your thing, I'm going to heal you. Right? It's also, they say the acronym for Iyar is Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Rachel. Right? It's the month of the patriarchs, and therefore there's an element of Rachamim, but that's always covered in Din. The reason why we don't cut our hair is the hair itself is connected to Din itself. Right? And we don't cut it as a way of reminding ourselves that this is the time of the year where God is actually using that Din to look at us. So when we see an Am Yisrael, who are after 2,000 years, have not learned the lessons of Rabbi Akiva's students, we're exactly where we were 2,000 years ago. We're repeating exactly the same stupid, dumb mistakes. What do you think is going to happen? It's just like, what do you think is going to happen? We're going to be dealing with the same kind of stuff. So of course Hashem's going to pull back a little bit, and He's going to say, "Hey, are you guys going to be willing to get up and be recalibrated? Are you going to ready to recalibrate yourselves?" And for most of Jews, unfortunately, they're not able to do that. All right. Anyway, first and second tablets. From Dessler, yesterday we left off. He was asking a little bit about the idea of us in a position of to receive the Torah. How could we receive the Torah if God is infinite and the Torah is infinite? We don't understand any of it. How are we able to mikabel any of it? So he talks about this idea of lishma. So now he's talking about the luchot. He says we are on page 50. If you have it there. He says we must remember the Torah was given to Israel twice. Once before the sin of the golden calf, and a second time after the sin.
That's why Hashem's name is twice in the 13 Midot.
Okay, that's one opinion. On each occasion, the giving of the Torah was accompanied by the tablets of stone. I'm guaranteeing you we're going to have the word hewn soon. Okay? The difference in these two sets of tablets reflect the two different modes in which the Torah was given. The first tablets were all from heaven, both writing and material. The stone of the tablet symbolizes the heart of Israel, on which the words of the Torah are to be engraved in our heart and our soul. If the stone, too, is from heaven, then we have a situation in which the Torah is being given to the heart which is already purified, which is free from bad midot and no longer identified with the Yetzer Hara. This level of Gan Eden, at that level, the Torah is acquired as a divine gift which transcends all material limitations. Therefore, the first luchot that were given to us represent a madrega beyond human comprehension. Beyond anything.
Which we technically
lost.
Or not at?
We lost.
At Gan Eden, or we lost
in the desert when we did the Chet Egel, we lost that state of getting to Adam before the Chet. That was gone. The second tablets, on the other hand, were hewn by Moshe, although the writing was from God. The material was from the earth. This reflects the situation after the sin of the golden calf. The heavenly Torah now had to be engraved on the hearts which were earthly and no longer pure. The first tablets are coming from Hashem, from a otherworldly place, and now it's coming from a stone that is very material. And in the same way that Moshe had to engrave the words there, we have to do the same thing on our hearts and our soul. Okay, the heavenly Torah now had to be engraved on our hearts, which were earthly and no longer pure. The Torah that can be absorbed at this level is certainly much more restricted, but the Torah is active on our lowly level and lowers itself to provide a corrective for our selfishness and impurity. In a sense, this can be seen as a desecration of the Torah. But the divine will accedes to this so that the Torah may exercise its purifying effect on human condition. Meaning, the state of the Torah that we have right now is not the ideal state. That's not what Hashem wanted. Hashem wanted us to be superhuman human beings, connected to the infinite. But because we were so lost with our own, stiff-neckedness, our stubbornness, our unwillingness to go ahead and bend, we made our own choices. We wanted to find our own medium to get to God. We'll build our own device to connect to Hashem. Didn't work. The Torah must be accepted primarily not just as by the intellect, but by the heart. But the heart will accept Torah only if it is purged of personal bias. It must, in some sense, be lishma. This is part of, I would say, the challenges that Rabbi Akiva's students had. These were super intellectuals, 24,000 students, very bright, the brightest of the bright people. But yet, they weren't learning Gemara. They were learning ancient Babylonian literature. Right? They weren't learning Torah. They were talking about.
You're saying they weren't internalizing
They weren't internalizing it. Because how could you, the whole essence of the Torah itself is to purify the heart. And the only way you could purify the heart is by humbling yourself. If you're humble, then how do you get yourself to a place with not having kavod? How do you do that? What's that? We definitely have elements of this today, 100%. I definitely think we have this today, for sure. Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, I would say the vast majority of Jews don't relate to the Torah as anything that is on the heart. They only see it from a place of intellect. It's either a book that is true or false. It's either relevant or irrelevant. There's no listen, for Sephardim, which is unique in the Jewish world, is that you could have Jews that are Sephardic that are not practicing anything, right? But there's a certain kavod for the Torah. There's a certain kavod for the Chachamim. In the Ashkenazi world, you're not religious. You don't have no connection. You're severed. You're out, right? So but I would imagine that the Sephardim have that heart. There's a little bit. They're more heartsick in that sense, you know. I do think it's changing. I think that you can create a situation where
you're right in what you say. It
Yeah.
is. I see it.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, no.
All my
yeah, you grew up like that.
family
Yeah,
and
of course. That's
thing
how I
are
grew up.
Sephardi.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah.
Why is that?
This is my theory. I don't know if this is true. My theory is that the Ashkenazi world put an overemphasis on intellect as success, right? And therefore, in order for you to have a kid that was raised with the highest education, you had less children, smaller families, and you put an overemphasis on education, 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 at the expense of community, at the expense of the more spiritual parts of, the pursuits that Judaism wants from us.
Do you really think that Ashkenazi families had fewer kids than Sephardim? There are plenty of people in Russian Poland that had 13 kids and 16 kids.
So yeah, in the last 100 years,
Not the
it's changed.
Hasidim.
It's changed in the last 100 years. I'm talking the last 100 years. You're right. It used to be that there was a disproportion. Yeah, it was 100%. But in the last 100 years, I'm seeing that. Listen, I worked in Brooklyn I used to work for an organization called the Russian American Jewish Experience. Okay, it started in 2009, 2008 actually, and the reason why I did this is because I'm looking at the numbers in Brooklyn at the time. This is in the late 2000s. There was approximately 250,000 Jews from the former Soviet Union that lived in Brooklyn, within a 5-mile radius, no synagogue for them, no program for them, nothing.
Odessa by the
Nothing. Yeah, Odessa by the Sea, they called it, right? They had 50,000 Jews between the ages of 18 and 30 in that small area. Now, we created this program. We took, over 10 years, 15,000 of those kids with us to Israel.
Beautiful.
On outreach programs and so on and so forth. We were super successful.
And did they become more?
We saw it, not only
identified?
they're way more. We did we hired the Research Institute of North America to actually do follow-up after 10 years of work. We actually lowered the assimilation rate in that area by 90%. It's measurable.
Wow.
Okay, so which is very cool. Anyway, but what was fascinating for me is that I was meeting all these kids and they all had the same story. One kid per family. Right, one kid per family. Yeah, and you didn't have, rare to find a family of 2, right? A tremendous emphasis on academics, zero connection to spirituality.
Both of their parents were academics. In the Sephardic, very few people went to college.
100. So I'm saying,
It's
so if you want me to explain the last 100 years,
I'm talking about here.
I'm talking about here right now. That's what I'm saying right now. Yeah, I'm not talking about the last 2,000 years. So right now, that's where I think that's what happened. The Sephardic world saw a need for community to survive Galut more than scholarship. In the Ashkenazi world, scholarship was the way in which you survived Galut. Sephardim have always maintained strong connection to the community. Ashkenazim have had a more scattered approach because of the anti-Semitism. They were more hiding more. They were more removed from community and so on and so forth.
Although when you go to Morocco, you had the Mela, where the Jews were.
Yeah.
In every city, which is very similar to the shtetls in Europe, where the Jews were also in a.
The shtetls in Europe were dismantled, okay, already by the early 1900s, right? We're talking about the last 100
And
years.
they moved to the city.
They moved to cities. They moved to other places. I mean, I can't. I've yet to find a Sephardic kid who grew up in a world where he didn't know he was Jewish. I'll never forget this. This is 2011. I got a phone call 3 days before Pesach from one of my students who's a student at NYU Dental School. He's a guy, I have a partner a lab partner. She just found out she was Jewish. She's from Poland. Her parents are both halachically Jewish on both sides.
But
They're both in
Holocaust scarred
they're
them.
both in the government,
Holocaust
okay, and they
scarred them.
don't speak about it. They never told their daughter she was this girl was dating an Italian who was an anti-Semite, and she was engaged to him, and she never had Pesach. She just had found all the parents like, by the way, you're Jewish. She's like, what? She was 22 years old.
Holocaust.
But Sfardim never had that. There's no reality where you didn't find something out. I didn't grow up religious, but I had my Star of David. You know what I'm saying? I knew I was Jewish, no matter. I was proud to be Jewish. I didn't know why, but I had this pride, right? Sfardim were able to maintain a connection to community, whereas Ashkenazim, maybe post-Holocaust or whatever the reason is, they were more secluded and more removed, and therefore their primary objective for the next generation was scholarship and not a connection to the community. Sfardim built the communities. That community warm feeling of opening and accepting was just that's my theory. Anyway, all right. Anyway, so Rav Dessler, let's just finish this piece. He says the Torah speaks primarily not just by intellect, but by the heart. But the heart will accept Torah only if it is purged of personal bias. It must, in some sense, be lishma. He spoke about this idea of lishma. The idea of lishma, shelo lishma ba lishma. You've heard that concept before. If you do something for not for the right reason, eventually do it for the right reason. That's not true, completely true. Meaning, shelo lishma ba lishma means like this. Let's say you want to start praying in shul. So you know what? I don't like praying in shul. I'm just going to go to shul because I'm going to go for the breakfast. I'm not going to go for prayer. And eventually, maybe, I'll like everything else that comes in Beit Knesset.
Many people.
That's how it
exactly.
That's how it happens, and that's why we have the breakfast. We're not saying it's not important.
Yeah.
Now, but if you don't have a vision in your mind that you actually want to pray, the shelo lishma ba lishma won't work. The shelo lishma ba lishma is, and this is true for any.
Stepstone.
It's a stepping stone, correct? Like it's that first initial. Okay, fine. I'm willing to do that, but I want to get to there. If you have no, I want to get to there. There's no bigger picture of what you're aiming for. It's shelo lishma ba lishma doesn't work. Right. So here he's saying, right, the lishma is about creating a space where I'm opening up my heart, not just my mind. I want to let go. I want to let God in. He says, how is it possible to attain lishma on that lower level, which we've described? Surely, here, the Yetzer Hara is in control, polluting our midot and our emotions in that low level. How does that even work? So this is what he says. He says the solution is this. There are two levels of lishma. We're on page 52. The highest motive is certainly the love of God, in gratitude for all his benefactions, not least of which is the gift of the Torah itself. On this level, one's love for Torah flows from one's love for the giver of the Torah. There is another level of lishma, which is called lishma shel Torah, for the sake of Torah itself. The person learns Torah for his own sake, in the sense that he enjoys and delights in the learning experience itself. This is not quite the same thing as the learning Torah for the love of God, but it's certainly a loftier than the petty motives of profit and prestige. I know so many students who become more religious because I want to have a good marriage. Judaism gives you a good life. It opens up connections. It opens up networking. It's not about doing Torah for the sake of Torah. It is also much more likely to lead complete lishma, since love of Torah carries one imperceptibly towards the love of the giver of the Torah itself. Let us reinforce our resolve to devote ourselves unswervedly to Torah. If we become completely attached to it with deep concentration and mental toil, we shall inevitably begin to savor its sweetness. This is our mode of receiving the Torah, the one which corresponds precisely to our true level. If we succeed here, we may hope that ultimately we shall be enabled to reach for a higher goal and complete lishma. So let's say it like this. Let's give you an example, right? Everyone here wants a closer connection to Borei Olam, right? We all want that. Well, how do I get there? Okay, I don't have time to learn all day. I'm working, I'm trading, I'm looking at deals, I'm meeting with people, I'm doing chesed, I'm helping Israeli soldiers, I'm doing all these things. Great, amazing. Let's talk about Shabbat for a second. What does your Shabbat look like? I have a great Shabbat. What do you mean? I have family meals, I have people over, I have guests, I go to the class in the morning. That's all great. Why don't you have 1 hour on Shabbat where you're in the Beit Midrash with a book, with a Chumash, with a Navi, on your own? Where is the time for you to develop the self? I can't understand all of it. I get it. You don't have to understand all of it. But you need to take actions. I don't care if it's 10 minutes, 20, whatever the time is on Shabbat, something you do for you because you want to have this deeper connection to Borei Olam. That's what he's saying. Shavuot is 20 days away. Okay, we're 20 days away from Shavuot. We're during this time of Din. This is supposed to be the time where I refine myself to want to become closer. I think there's like 2.5 Shabbats left before Shavuot, or 3 Shabbats before Shavuot. Find time to do the Shema, because is it a Saturday night? Is Shavuot? No, it's Sunday night. Okay, fine. That's why I was doing the half. Anyway, so find time between now and then to ask yourself 2 questions. Number 1 is, what does the humblest version of you look like that allows you to kind of draw yourself closer to God? And then what are the things you need to do to get there? That's it. That's what he's saying. This is how you acquire Torah ad Shavuot. Have a great day, everybody. We'll pick up tomorrow.